Hey, everybody. I am Dr. Andy Roark, and this is the Uncharted podcast. Guys, I got a great one for you today. I am here with Anthony Pierlioni, and we are talking about his book, Veterinary Leadership Through Fresh Eyes. Guys, I don't want to tell you too much about this episode other than it's real good, and you're going to enjoy it. Anthony is a very, very interesting guy. His book is really, really good. It is going to go on my list of gifts that I give to people who have been elevated to the practice management role. That's 100% where I'm going with this. But anyway, I ask him a number of things about his book. We dive into some learnings there. I get him to sort of unpack some stories for me, things like that. This is a really good episode packed with some really great pearls. I think you guys are going to really enjoy it. Let's get into it.
And now, the Uncharted Podcast.
And we are back. It's me, Dr. Andy Roark, and my friend, Anthony Pierlioni. Anthony, how are you, my friend?
I'm living the dream. So excited to be here with you.
Dude, I am so glad that you are here. So, for those who do not know you, you are manager of training and facilitation at VCA, and you're also a hardcore turtle conservationist. Do you have a title for, like,
Yeah.
Are you CEO at something? What is that?
I thought you were going to say hardcore
CEO.
turtle nerd. I was excited for it, but that's okay. I'm the vice president of the Turtle Room, which is a nonprofit organization, a smaller nonprofit that does a lot of great stuff around the world, actually.
Yeah, so your turtle interests are amazing. You and I just met a couple of months ago when I was speaking in Connecticut at the Veterinary Practice Management Council of Connecticut. You were the immediate past president, correct?
Yeah, I was the president, and the term limits are 1 year, but I was the president for 2 years. It's kind of an unprecedented bit of nonsense that led to me being the president for 2 years. Yeah, which was wonderful though. It was great, but I was nervous that maybe we'd have to go for a third term, but we have someone else now, so I'm very happy to give up that job.
We got someone else. Yeah. I was afraid I was going to be in charge again. Yes, that's the voice of experience there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you and I met there. You were very, very fun. I really enjoyed getting to talk with you, meet with you. I find you really fascinating. I love the management training work that you do with VCA. I love your passion about turtle conservation. You clearly have a lot of things that you're working on and that are really interesting. And then as I was leaving, you gave me a copy of your book, and it's called Veterinary Leadership Through Fresh Eyes. And I read it on the plane right home. And so I actually was like, let's take a look at this thing. And I popped it open and I read it. And it's really good. And it's really important in that you write this book very personally. It is very much about your life and experiences that you had and the lessons that you learned along the way. And so if there's anyone out there who is a practice manager, even if you've been a practice manager for a while, but especially if you're a new practice manager, this book is excellent as far as talking through how you became a practice manager. And then you were very vulnerable and honest and candid about learning from the School of Hard Knocks. And there's so many parts of this that I really, really liked a lot. And so what I want to do with you today, I want to pull out a couple of the things that I really liked in the book and just sort of get you to talk about them a little bit. And my hope is that we can hit a couple learning points that I think people will find really interesting, that I found really interesting, that I kind of want to unpack with you a little bit. Is that okay?
That sounds incredible.
Let's start with your background. So you started out pretty early on. You were a social worker before you went into vet medicine. And so you were a social worker. Let me lay some context here. For people who are not watching on YouTube, you're a big guy. I think you say in the book you're 6'9", is that right?
Yeah, I think I'm officially 6'8" now, but I was 6'9" at one point, but I'm already shrinking in my old age.
You've gotten shorter. Yeah. At one point you were 6'9". You're 6'9". You said, and again, it was just really candid talk. The idea of you going to college was not on your mind until the basketball coach said to you, you can go to college. That just says so much about you. You definitely, and you talk a little bit about it. You had a tough childhood, but then you get this opportunity. You talk a bit about basketball. I don't want to turn off people who are not sports fans.
Right.
I love the basketball piece, but you do talk a bit about basketball and just what that meant in your life. And I thought it was really good. And then you came out and you started doing social work. And so you worked with people who had co-occurring disorders. So a lot of substance abuse, a lot of mental health issues and things like that. And the first thing that I want to call out was in the book. You said, and this really struck me. I like this phrasing a lot. You were talking about at the nonprofit that you were working at, one of the founding families that started the organization had said that when one of her sons broke his leg, friends and neighbors brought over casseroles and well wishes. And when her other son had a mental health setback, she didn't hear anything from anybody.
Right.
And I thought that was, I've never heard it laid out that way. But when you talk about sort of stigma around mental health, I think that that's accurate. You know what I mean?
Totally.
I think a lot of people will say, oh yeah, totally. I'm supportive of mental health. And it's funny, but I think a lot of us don't really know what to do or how to engage in that. And so that was such a good story of like, when we say, oh, there's a stigma around mental health, that really spoke to me. Can you talk a little bit about sort of social work, what this was like in sort of a wellness space? How did this help to sort of how did this help to grow you towards being a practice manager?
Yeah, that's the best question right there, because that's what it all moves towards. So I found myself in social work basically because I needed a job that felt like it was going to be, a big boy adult job where I could go and adult the best way I could figure out how to do. And I dealt with a lot in my own family. My father was like my best friend and my hero, and he dealt with a lot of substance use issues and everything. So I always felt like I was good at dealing with disappointment. And so I was good at saying, like, the old adage, like, you could lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And that was a huge thing in the social work piece of things. But that's another field where people are underpaid and underappreciated and all of that. And I felt myself like, all right, I'm either going to need to really lean into this and really dedicate my life to social work, or I'd always loved animals my entire life since I was like 5 years old. But being someone who never thought about college, I didn't know you could go to school and learn things that would put me into a position where I could be a zoologist or biologist. I never thought that was something I could do either. So anyway, I found myself as a social worker being able to really, if somebody came in like on drugs, I could tell what drug they were on based on my experience as a childhood when I was, observing adults around me who were using drugs and things, which sounds horrible, but it was actually a wonderful skill to have as a professional at that point, and to be able to compartmentalize.
I've got to pause you. I got to pause here for a second.
Yeah.
You have got the most amazing outlook at this. You're like, wow, I was able to spot which drugs they were on, and that was really useful. And then you said, because of my childhood, I was really good at dealing with disappointment. And I'm like, wow, that is the most silver lining thing that I've ever heard.
It's true, though. It's true. So I think, I have my own struggles and all of that. It's not like life was just easy because I went through tough things when I was younger, but I think I just got lucky. And I think that's the thing that scares me the most as a parent now, is like when I look at my kids, like, you look at situations and sometimes kids really struggle and you think, wow, they had a good situation with good parents. What the heck happened? There's so much nuance there. But for me, I think just my parents got lucky. My mother was in prison when I was a kid, and now she's a nurse. She had a record expunged, and she's this wonderful grandmother to my daughters.
Wow.
So like, and my father is no longer with us because he succumbed to his demons. But there's so many lessons to learn there. You say, like, my father used to tell me all the time, he would always give me great advice that, like, you either repeat the mistakes your parents made, or you will never make the mistakes your parents made. And I think I'm the latter version. So anyway, it helped me a lot in social work. I think I was a natural. I was always a good friend who was trusted and liked to listen to people. I always, led with a bit of curiosity in my interactions and things. But the piece with moving on, I found myself realizing that there was an opportunity to maybe look into like the animal field. Wouldn't the veterinary field be amazing? And VCA they took a chance on me. And from the second I walked in as this 6'9", social work trained person, I was immediately noticed by everyone in the organization, it felt like. And then also, I saw that I had a skill set that was desperately needed in the veterinary space, which is, there's so many folks who, I would run these workshops, and one of the questions we would ask is, why did you get into this field? And the answer was almost always, I got in this field because I like animals more than I like people, ha, ha, ha. And I would cringe when I would hear that.
Yeah.
But it's true. And we know as leaders, we need to help support and prepare our folks to navigate the very real, never-ending, unrelenting human-related challenges that come their way, because that's where our success comes from. And I think it's also where a lot of our stress comes from. Most of our stress comes from in this very difficult field.
Oh, well, I agree with that. It's funny because you, like I said, you are physically a very big guy. You've got a background in sports. You talk to them, like, This is one of the things, this is what I really loved about you when I was reading this, and I was like, I got to talk to Anthony because it speaks so much to me. So one of the biggest growth paths for me in my adult life has really been around conflict avoidance. Like I hate to be the bad guy. Yeah. And as I have grown and I have been a leader of people and I have run my own business and run a couple of businesses, I can't get the job done. Right. And not be able to do this. And it's funny, and you said at the book at one point, the first time that you had to write someone up, I think, you had to go see the doctor for stress management.
Yes, 100%.
So well, first of all, talk about that a little bit. So the things I wanted to bring up here was the first time was just, you said writing someone up, you had great stress, and like, you tower over everyone in the room, but you've got this wonderful heart. And what really spoke to me, you talked about that. And then the way you talked about how you now think about termination. So, obviously, like having to let someone go, it's a nightmare for a lot of people. And it's something that they really struggle with. And you have this wonderful, healthy way of looking at it, which is something this is exactly sort of the philosophy I came to just by a whole entirely different path. But can you start to talk about that a little bit of like sort of how do you bring in the empathy, and then how do you start to frame that to not feel like a monster, if and when you say get to the place where you have to let somebody go?
It's funny because someone with more experience, when I was going through that for the first time, just writing someone up, and ultimately we did let that person go. A friend of mine with more experience said, by the end, you're kind of frustrated with them. You're mad at them because they are doing this to you. Now you have to do this. So it makes it easier. I never really felt that way. I always felt a lot of empathy. And I think for me, one of the things that's beautiful about leadership, which I know I wrote in the book, is the beauty is, and when you really wrap your head around this, it makes it easier. Showing someone what they need to do to be successful and holding them accountable to that, and then also helping them be successful. Yeah. It's all the same thing. It all goes hand in hand. Like you're not just coming down on them, you're giving them the playbook that they need and helping them use it. And then when they continue to not do that, then you've had these conversations over time, and it really does make it easier to just have that conversation. I think by the time you actually get to the point where it's time to say goodbye, usually they've either done something really egregious where your hands are tied and it just is what it is, or it's been something over time where you've had the conversation so many times that there should be a mutual understanding that, we talked about this on this date, and it, it is kind of is what it is. But that's the piece always that, holding them accountable and giving them the tools to be successful are one and the same. And we're doing that at the same time. It doesn't have to be doom and gloom or authoritative or aggressive in any way. You can still go to it as somebody who truly does care about them. And then ultimately, like letting them go could be a good thing. I know many people where a big change or losing a job is the best thing that ever happened to them. So you could be helping them as well.
Well, I find that things tend to work out, for the best. I really do believe that. And, this idea with something like termination, for example, or even just these really hard conversations, it's the old Brene Brown idea of what is kind. So it's just like clear as kind, but also what is kind? And it's like, I see myself as a kind person. I want to be a nice person. And is me not having an honest conversation with this person about how things are going, is that kind? I would say it's absolutely not. They're going to continue to flounder. Right. They're going to continue to have resentment aimed towards them by the rest of the team that they may not even know about, because I didn't do the kind thing, which is say, hey, when you do this behavior, this is the outcome, and this is how the rest of the team is affected. And so this being able to frame it in a positive headspace of, I'm going to do the kindest thing for you, which is to say something before this becomes an issue. I'm going to mention it to you. Right. And then if it continues on, I'm going to say something. And it's about maximum kindness in the world, which means it's about kindness to that individual, but it's also, as a manager, as a leader, it's my job to be kind to the rest of the team.
Right.
And so is it kind to my team to not intervene and have this conversation? No, it's letting them down. And I don't want to let the team down. And so I have to step up and I have to have this conversation, which I do believe is best for the individual person. And then I think you explain it in the book so well, in that if you give this person a roadmap to success, it's not about slapping their hand and going, you really messed this up and you need to stop messing it up. It's about saying, look, this is what we need going forward, and this is how I see you developing. And you say this really nicely, and you've got great wording in here of how you say it, but it's essentially, I want to make sure I'm giving you the tools and the support that you need to be successful. How can I do that?
Right.
And meaning it and following up with them so that then ultimately, if they have to be let go, it's because they have not followed the path that was laid out for them. They haven't taken advantage of the opportunities, and you sleep soundly knowing that you did everything you could to remove the obstacles. At some point, the person has to actually demonstrate the behaviors that are required or stop doing the behaviors that are undermining the team.
Absolutely.
And you can't make them do that. But I think being able to sleep soundly, knowing that you did what you could, I think a lot of people wrestle with that. And I don't know that they figured that out yet. And so, but when you talked about it, you also talked about sort of how you learn these lessons. And that's why I was reading this book and I was like, man, this is a fantastic book for people, especially early in their leadership journey. But I think everybody gets a lot out of it. Your story is just interesting, but you just lay it down really well as far as sort of how you learn these things.
I appreciate that so much. I can't believe it's real. I originally came up with the idea and I told regional leadership within DCA who I was working closely with. And I told the idea and kind of made it a personal goal. And I just started chipping away at it. When I told him, his voice got higher, he's like, okay, all right, that sounds good. He didn't really believe I was going to follow through. And it took me about a year to write it, but there were so many things. I found myself in a position where there were so many amazing things that I felt like I was accomplishing. And there were so many things I was learning, and there were so many things that I felt like I had developed that had become like core part of who I was as a leader. And I felt like all of it connected. It connected with basketball. It connected with social work. It connected with growing up in the childhood that I did. And I felt like just this kind of amazing moment of clarity where everything was just kind of connecting, and just kept writing. And the more I wrote, the more I was like, what, this isn't that bad. And then I had huge imposter syndrome because then it became time for it to be out there. And I barely told anyone, but it's crazy. The book continues to sell. And I've had people tell me that your book changed my life. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I can't, my life can't be real. This can't be real.
I'm going to buy this for friends that I see getting promoted, especially your technicians that get promoted up to a practice manager. I'm going to buy this for them. Just be like, look, there's so many pearls in here. And it's one thing for me to walk into a hospital and talk to someone who's a new practice manager and be like, all right, look, this is kind of how we set it up and this is how it goes. You know what I mean? And what questions do you have for me? And I think what you really pulled off here is you captured what it feels like when you're getting started. And like your stories really demonstrate that uncertainty, that insecurity. I thought a lot about this because I used to talk at vet schools a lot. And I really like talking to vet schools. I think I would like to get back into talking at vet schools. But I used to talk at vet schools a lot, and it was really easy because I was a fairly new graduate. And so I would say, oh, guys, this is what I learned, and this is how it felt, and this is how the first year in vet school felt. And it was all still very real to me, and I remember that emotional experience, which is what they were really interested in. And then the farther you get away from it, the harder it is for you to it's hard for me to call back that time when I was terrified of a wellness exam.
Right.
You know what I mean? I was like, I've done thousands of these. But it was the first one as a doctor. Boy, it was, my heart was racing. And I think being able to talk to someone in a way that they hear, it's meeting the learner where they are. And I just think that this book really walks them through very nicely how you learn these hard things and the story of sort of the first termination and how it didn't go particularly well. And then what you learn from it. I just think that that's really valuable. One of the things you do in this book that I think is really ambitious is you have a pretty good section. It may be the biggest chapter.
It is.
It's on trying to teach self-awareness.
Yeah.
And so you talk about sort of personality mapping and things like that. I know so many people who struggle with trying to raise self-awareness in others and people that they manage and stuff. Can you, without getting too far down in the weeds, give me your overall philosophy here. Like how do you teach managers to help grow self-awareness in their teams?
Well, I like to use a tool. So, my favorite tool is the Enneagram. It's what I used. It's what we used in my social work days, my entire organization at that time. But I like to use a tool to help frame it. You have the DISC and Myers-Briggs and Canine Colors and all of these different personality typing systems. But I think, overall, first you start with self-awareness, and then with, the next step from that is to start to have some empathy, leads to empathy for those around you. We naturally all live by the golden rule. And we were taught to do that, right? Treat people how you want to be treated. But the truth is, as a leader, you need to recognize that everyone on a team doesn't want to be treated the same. If I donate money for something, I want my name on it. And then it boggles my mind personally that there are people that donate large sums of money and do it anonymously. Like, are you kidding me? I want my name on the plaque, on the brick in the walkway, whatever the heck it is. It's just funny to me. I'm so far on that side. But, I think helping leaders to understand that, and then also, using themselves from the self-awareness standpoint, using their own self as the window with which to view their team and to understand, like, maybe I communicate so well with so-and-so and appreciate them so much. Maybe it's because I'm an Enneagram type 8 and they're an Enneagram type 8, and we're both very direct and clear. So we could talk to each other like cavemen. We could say 1 or 2 or 3 words and be done with the conversation. Whereas this person over here gets frustrated every time I'm direct. What is that about? How come they can't just appreciate, what I'm trying to do here? Understanding why that is the next step. So it starts with that self-awareness, but then beyond that, you can start to understand what makes each member of our team important. And just like we should care about equity, inclusion, and diversity, in the more obvious sense, we should also really look for diversity of thought and strategy of problem solving and everything else. We should not surround ourselves with people that think and do the way that we do, because then we're really setting ourselves up for failure, I think.
It's actually a little bit out of order in the book, but it's sort of the things that occur to me here. I really liked an example that you gave about empowerment as far as working with the team. And so the example that you gave, I just thought this is a picture of the type of stuff that's in the book, but I just really like this a lot. You were talking about empowering the team, and I took a lot of stuff out of this story, but you told a story about working at an emergency clinic, and the staff was told that they would not communicate wait times to people who called. Mm-hmm. And the idea was that ultimately you're in an emergency clinic, and they had big wait times. And the clients were getting upset. They would say, well, how long is it? And the person at the front desk would say, looking around, probably 20 minutes. But by the time the person got there, that was not the case anymore. Or something else came in, and then they end up waiting 4 hours, and they're really angry. And so the obvious decision was, we can't tell these people what the wait time is. And at that point, the staff says, we're not allowed to tell them what the wait time is. What that obviously meant in their minds in the moment at first was, if they call and they say, how much time is it? We say, we can't tell you. It's a long wait. We can't tell you. The problem arises when someone calls and they have a critically emergent pet that, had they come in, would have cut the line and been triaged. But because they called and they told, we can't tell you what the wait time is, you're going to have to just wait and see. That person then drives past your hospital to another hospital, and the pet dies on the way because they didn't get to the farther away hospital. And I'm going to let you take it from here. But Anthony, talk to me about that scenario. Talk to me about the ultimate resolution a bit.
I guess as a general, and this will answer your question, as a general statement, a science-loving or very, I guess I'll just say, folks in vet med who struggle so much with the volume of work that we have. And gosh, after COVID, during COVID, at our emergency hospitals, it was intense, right? So you want everything to be black and white. You want to be told, what am I doing? What's the protocol? Yes or no? Yep. What's the plan? And I think, this is a field where it involves people, it involves nuance, and things can change, especially in emergency medicine, can change so fast. You really need to handle it on a case-by-case basis, be honest, and spend the time to connect, even when you don't really have the time. So you get better at it over time. So I think with that whole piece is, when you're providing service, whether it's answering that call of the person who's frantic and trying to find an emergency clinic that'll take their pet, or whether it's just talking to the person who just walked in with their new puppy, or it's an end-of-life conversation, or whatever it is, we need to get away from providing that black and white service and really get to what's colorful, like the hospitality piece. Like, I'm a person who wants to connect with you and wants to care for you and your loved one here. It's not transactional. And that piece where they're just saying, oh, we can't give wait times, that's transactional. They're potentially going to come here and spend thousands of dollars. They're scared that they're scared that their family member's dying. So explain the nuance, right? Actually take a few seconds and say, we can't tell over the phone. We can't triage over the phone. So if your pet needs life-saving measures, then there's not going to be a wait. So I want you to understand that the people that come in and have a long wait, their pets are stable. So just explaining that, it only takes a couple of seconds, but I think it makes a world of difference. And we don't realize sometimes we can't step back and take that like outsiders look at things and realize what we're doing isn't right. I understand we need to, time is of the essence, but communication is so important. And I think 95% of the time, 98% of the time that we're dealing with disgruntled clients or, we're being told we misdiagnosed something, it's all based on communication.
You give this example. You sort of say animals with life-threatening conditions will not have a wait time. They'll be triaged immediately to ensure their situation is not life-threatening. If it is a serious situation, life-saving efforts will be employed immediately. If the patient is stable, however, wait times can be significant. And again, I know that's not exactly what someone would say over the phone. I like the example wording, but I thought that was a really good way of, it's 3 sentences.
Right.
And it explains, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. This is how it's going to affect you. But to me, that's empowerment. It's not, hey guys, the protocol is we don't give out wait times.
Right.
Go forth and follow the rule blindly.
Right.
We're like, look, we know why this rule is here, but we are going to be empathetic. We are going to honor the spirit of our hospital and what we're trying to do. We're going to take an extra moment to talk to people who are panicked or who are upset and try to help them understand. I thought that was really nice. That level of empowerment and saying, I trust you guys to be good communicators and to engage the clients and sort of bring across why we do what we do. But I think it's a really good story. I think it's a great way of talking to the team about how we articulate our why and why we articulate our why. Like there is context here that is worth taking time to explore.
Right.
Like there's value in bringing across the nuance of the situation. I thought that was a really good example of sort of team communication and where it can kind of break down, because you're right. It's efficient. It's very transactional. It's not compassionate. It's not the best for our patients. And so let's accomplish our goal, which is not giving people wait times when we really don't know what in the world they're going to be, but also not just, getting cold and direct with them when they need a little bit more than that. So I thought that was the type of example that, again, I just think that stuff is so valuable to have somebody lay out and say, well, this is what we did at our practice.
Right. It's totally true. And we need to it's tough when you're a new manager, a new leader. It's tough to give that type of autonomy, to just give your team the keys to the car and say, go ahead, good luck. But it's what we need to do. Yeah. And if you really do believe that you're building future leaders, you're not successful. You're not a successful leader until you create a leader who can create a leader. We need to start showing our teams how to do it, understanding the why and the how, as opposed to the what, that this is how we're going to do it. Actually let them figure it out and navigate it. Yes, it's uncomfortable at first, but they end up being stronger pretty soon because they're having those calls all the time. And instead of fighting with people later, and we actually, at that time, we would do ourselves a service by doing this, because maybe I'm dealing with less complaint calls because we're actually treating people like human beings instead of treating them like numbers. People feel that. They really do.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, we're talking about an emergency hospital context here, too.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
This is not your GP. I think that's really important content. I want to ask you about another thing that you say. So I really like that you lean into doing a good job as a manager. We talk about this empowerment, this growth, this development, really sort of investing yourself into the hospital. And at the same time, you have this piece that I really liked. And so you said, your total loyalty should not lie with the hospital at which you work, especially if the environment is causing strife in your life, but rather with the experiences and fulfillment a hospital can provide for you. You deserve the best situation available, and good hospitals find a way to provide that. For veterinary leadership, it is up to us to truly provide that. Unpack that for me a little bit.
I agree. I get like chills as hearing you, someone I respect so much, reading what I wrote. But I agree with it so much. Obviously, I wrote it. But yes, the purpose statement for VCA Animal Hospitals, which I understand the outsider's perspective on corporate medicine. I get all of that. And we have over 1,000 hospitals. If you think every one of them is a well-oiled machine, you're wrong. But it is a tremendous organization that cares about these things. And I teach it because I teach it to new VCA associates because it's something I care so much about. And that's basically what that piece means. And you notice I keep VCI out of the book because I didn't want to make that like an official part of it in any way. Those 3 letters don't show up anywhere in the book. But to me, that's kind of what that touches on. Is I took the workshop that I now oversee for VCA. I took 7 days in, and I was at a hospital that was struggling at the time. It wasn't all bad. It wasn't all good. There was a mix, and I would see things that my social worker brain would see, and I say, that doesn't seem right. So then I took this workshop, and we talked about the VCA way, the way things should be. And it's not what I saw all the time. So when I would see those things, it gave me the confidence to say, you know what? We can be better. We can do better. And I think as leaders, if we really want to live by that purpose statement of taking care of the future of veterinary medicine, right? My daughters are 10 and 8 and they love animals. I could totally see them ending up in this field one day. I want them to find veterinary medicine in a better place than I found it. And that means a lot to me. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that it's not some big idea. It's literally every day how we show up for each other, how we show up for the members of our team, and then beyond that is you also need to know your worth, that if you're not getting that from your hospital, your employer, they're just that. And I see a lot of kind of blind loyalty in the veterinary space where someone will stay with a hospital for 30 years and put up with all sorts of, inappropriate stuff or unfair stuff just because there's a fear that the grass is browner over there and that they take pride in their loyalty. But I think it's really important that people should be encouraged to chase their dreams. And if that's outside of this hospital, I, as the hospital manager, I'm going to support them. And I think you'll find more often than not that those people will sometimes find their way back because they know how they were treated on their way out the door. But I think in veterinary medicine, a lot of times people are meant to feel bad for choosing to go elsewhere. And I don't think that's right.
One of my pieces of perspective that it still works for me and I use this a lot is your relationship with the vet clinic should be like a relationship in other aspects of your life. Like you should be giving in your relationships, but you should also expect to be treated with respect and you should expect to be not abused or worn out, and it goes both ways. I don't want to be parasitic in any relationship that I have. I also do not want to be in a parasitic relationship where I feel like I'm getting taken advantage of or this is not rewarding for me. And so just like we build interpersonal relationships and say, I want relationship with people that value my time and my effort, and I want to be a sort of giving partner in the relationship. But I do expect the other side of the partnership to be giving in exchange. I think that that's a good, healthy way to put this. And so I just really like that you kind of laid that down. For me, it almost sort of bookends. We start off and you're talking a bit about wellness, and we talk about sort of how you came up through social work, and then we really get into the meat and potatoes of management. I appreciated that you took time not to say, this is how you do it, but you say, let me tell you about how I messed this up the first time and how it felt and what I learned. I think that that's the best way to learn. It's so humble. It's so approachable. It's just, I really like that style. It's a style I aspire to use as well. I try to tell a lot of stories about the way I've screwed things up. And I just think that people, they enjoy it and they see themselves in it. Nobody wants to hear the hero talk about how great he or she is, And so I think your book is really great in that regard. So anyway, your book is called Veterinary Leadership Through Fresh Eyes. I'll put a link to it in the show notes for people who want to find it and pick it up. Anthony, where can people find you online? Where can they learn more about you and what you're doing? And you can plug your turtle conservation work if you like.
I'd love to. Yeah. So the Turtle Room is my organization, and the turtleroom.org is the website for that. If you're interested in what we're doing to conserve some of the rarest species on the planet, not just turtle species, but rarest animals on the planet, period. I've on social media, on Instagram and YouTube, turtle stuff under the handle Just Turtles. I'm on Facebook under my name, Anthony Pierlioni. And then if you're interested in the veterinary book or any of my turtle books, those are on the Amazon. I'm the only Anthony Pierlioni in the world. So if you got the spelling right, you could find me and my books and everything. So that's another cool thing too.
Yeah. Well, challenge accepted. I am going to go find another Anthony Pierlioni just to show you cannot be the only one.
You might.
But you are one of a kind.
Spelling.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I can't tell you how much this means to me. I'm such a fan of yours, and the idea that you would read my book, I just gave it to you so you could see it. The fact that you read it like that,
why?
You're the coolest. You really are.
Oh, well, you're very kind. I was on the plane and I thought, let's see what this guy's got to say. And I just really glad that I did. It's a really good book. And so anyway, it's going to go into my rotation of books that I hand out to people when I see them at certain phases in their life. Anyway, thanks for being here. Guys, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Take care of yourselves, gang. We'll talk to you again soon. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks to Anthony for being here, guys. If you get a chance, check out his book. I'm not getting paid to say that. I just genuinely really like his book. This episode is not supported by VCA or anything. I know Anthony, he's a big fan of VCA. That's, this is 100% just, I met him. I like his book. I like what he has to say, and I'm glad for him to come on and share the word. So anyway, that's what I got, gang. Take care of yourselves. Also, if you have a question for our mailbag, send us an email. It's podcast@unchartedvet.com. Let us know what's going on in your practice, and me and Stephanie Goss will give our best shot to it. So anyway, take care, gang. I'll talk to you later.